The personal development, coaching, and self help industry is worth millions of dollars. And for good reason, a lot of the time. Of course, there's bad information and bad coaches and spiritual charlatans, but the good ones, they need to make a living. Whether their talks are recorded and uploaded or they make content specifically for video, nearly everyone in these scenes is on YouTube. And something else that's been gaining massive popularity on the platform, content creators focusing on personal development with incredibly lush editing, pretty much cinematic in some cases, and of course, often delivering excellent value, but with the ability to endlessly scroll through personal growth videos and click off after about now if you're not spiking your dopamine this second and keep moving until something entertains you. Is this getting easier than ever to fall into what we're going to talk about in this video? The two biggest personal development traps. What's up, conscious creators? It's Alex here, and in this video I include a conversation with a good friend called Emerald from her channel, The Diamond Net, and I'd really love you to all welcome her and pay close attention because I believe that she's a very insightful being that can help you to understand yourself on a deeper level. And we talked about the two biggest traps of personal development so you can avoid falling into them. The first one being personal development as entertainment. With the slew of videos and contents and books and audiobooks and talks and workshops dedicated to personal development, you could spend your whole life being engaged with it all on an entertainment level instead of truly taking action on the information provided, never planning to actually take a deep dive into yourself because, oh, that person has a new video out and, oh, it's another 30-day challenge. He meditated for 30 days. I wonder what happened. Let's see. Maybe it was crazy. Constant distraction will be the death of your dreams. And the ironic thing is, that distraction can actually end up being personal growth content that's supposed to help you achieve your dreams. I asked Emerald about her thoughts on why this can be the case. Easy for us to get sucked into just being entertained by personal growth and spirituality as opposed to taking action and doing that self-inquiry. I mean, how would you approach this if it was you or you were helping someone, say, within your coaching practice?
So if I thought that somebody was kind of like almost just like looping through like personal development content or spiritual content and not really taking action, what I would do is I would first focus on, okay, what's the reason why this has become a form of escapism? Because it can just as easily become a form of escapism. And when it comes to, almost like an illusion of growth that comes from that, because you feel like, oh, it's like I'm understanding so much and it's like all the neurons are firing. And then afterward, you don't quite integrate it or apply it to your life. And so it becomes this cycle of kind of like almost self-deception, like thinking that, oh, okay, hang on, I'm actually growing right now, when it's more of like, a sneaky way of being lulled into complacency. And so what I would first look at is, okay, why is this person in this loop in the first place? Is there some kind of emotional reason why they're mired down in this trap? Is there something they're trying to avoid? Why is it they haven't taken that first step? Is it, maybe in a sense, anything can become an addiction. And usually addictions are because there's some other reality that they're trying to avoid. And I think ultimately, though it's overall good that, this content is out there and it's, really, really helpful, for many, many people, I think if it's helping you avoid those uncomfortable emotions, like that's moving in the opposite direction. So it's really about getting the person to orient to those uncomfortable emotions so that they can actually unravel the barriers to integrating those things into their life and going in the direction they're meant to go in.
I wonder how easy it is to recognize when you are in this pattern of engaging with personal growth and spirituality in this kind of entertainment way, and other times when you're taking action that's truly in line with your higher purpose. I'm sure even after, many, many years of meditation and interest in personal growth and spirituality, there are still times that I get distracted and just become, like almost overly obsessed about the details of a philosophy, or, just getting that new bit of information on YouTube, learning that new thing, reading that new book. And I have to check in with myself sometimes and think to myself, is what I'm actually doing in line with where I really want to go? What do you think are some helpful tips and strategies to tap into what you actually want and take action on what actually means the most to you, instead of falling into this trap of personal growth just being like a source of entertainment and nothing else?
Well, it requires like a high degree of discernment between what's really genuinely expansive and what's just exciting or stimulating. And like this is something that, it was tricky for me when things started to reach a point of diminishing returns with like some of the content that I've watched in the past. It was kind of like at first it was like, oh, so many insights, so much, it's opening up new worlds to me, and genuinely a very positive thing. But then after so long of focusing on the same concepts, without, let's say, there's an immediate integration of stuff from before, but then it's like reaches this point of diminishing returns where it's like you're just looping around on the same thing. It's like you're going around and around on the same topic, and it becomes more almost like, it's just a stimulation that happens. And it's no different than if you're like, I don't know, playing video games or watching television. There's this fatigue that comes along with it. And so if you can sense that fatigue, like where you just feel a little bit drained, you can kind of guarantee, well, maybe not guarantee, but most likely you're in that loop. Whereas if you're feeling like this sense of like, oh man, I'm totally opening up new worlds for myself. This is new, and you're sensing things pop off and things break open. That's when you really get the sense of this content is actually really helping me. Now, what I found in recent years is that for me, content doesn't grab me as much anymore. I create content, but in terms of watching spiritual content or personal development content, it's quite rare that I'll find something that really strikes me, because it is something that I've looked into for quite a long time. And so it's one of those things, I think that that's my intuition's way of saying that I need to focus more on the body. I need to focus less up here and more down here. And so I think, if you ever find yourself in the situation where really nothing is really resonating, I would say then that's the time to drop into being. That's the time to focus toward, existence in the body in the present moment, and less about, like, let's say, getting the mindset right and cultivating space in the mind for spiritual insight to come through.
The second trap of personal development that we talked about is the trap of doing personal growth to reach happiness in the future and ending up constantly postponing your happiness into that future that never arrives because it's always now. Now, of course, there's going to be times where personal growth or walking a spiritual path becomes challenging, and latent emotions from the past get triggered as old dysfunctional habits and beliefs come to the surface, and we dissolve them with our new awareness. Sometimes it's like part of you is dying. At least part of the ego is dying, and that can feel uncomfortable. Now, I'm not out here to say that these paths are just full of fun and joy and rainbows all the time, because they're not. And it is the case that once you've done a fair bit of growing, once you've had a few realizations about the deeper aspects of yourself, there are new things to be enjoyed. You can enjoy your healthier body, your sharper and clearer mind, but so much suffering that we're often trying to escape from through personal growth work to get to a better future actually comes from the dissatisfaction with how things are now, with the remedy being inner acceptance for this now. But if we go through the process, does that mean that there'll be no motivation? Won't motivation just be replaced with this kind of placid passivism because apparently everything's all gravy now? Is it possible to be satisfied and at peace now, as well as having that burning desire to grow and create. Yes, it's possible. How would you guide someone into being motivated from their own peace and happiness and still being extremely driven to do the work?
So, to answer that question, I want to first go into a little bit of like information about what it is to be in touch with being. So, basically, we have what is, we have being, and then we have the ideas that our mind places on top of that. And this can lead us to think that there are things that are going on that are wrong or things that we're trying to get away from. So we get this negative motivation and we just keep trying to bring ourselves back up to where things should be, without realizing what is. And oftentimes it's this thought that if I'm really going to go in the direction of what I want, I have to like resist against what is. But what happens when you start to become more conscious, and this is what I recommend, any kind of practice that's going to allow you to be more conscious of what's happening in the present moment up underneath that projection of thoughts, that's going to help the river take you downstream. And that's where that motivation comes from. Just the energy naturally flows once you are in alignment with your being. So basically, it's a bit of a subtractive process. It's like removing the illusion that there's something wrong or messed up right now. And that river naturally has direction. So it's not like you have to think something's wrong to go in a direction or that you want improvement for yourself to go in a direction. It's that there's a natural direction to being. And, that's unique for every person. And when you remove the barriers to that, you just naturally get in the stream, and it's almost like life just carries you down. All you have to do is respond to it as it comes, which tends to flow quite naturally because from that state, the inspiration doesn't come from any kind of shadow motivations. It comes from just the natural flow of your being. So basically, in a nutshell, anything that's going to make you more conscious of what's going on underneath your thought-based projections.
What other tips could you give someone to kind of transition from a state of like being motivated by these short-term needs and these short-term gratifications and help them to discover some kind of course of action that's actually in line with their skills and like what their interests are, and enables them to have like the impact on the world that they want to from a place of positivity and enjoying that process? How would you kind of get someone to tap into their deeper self to discover a course of action?
So basically, once you've actually like kind of grounded somewhat in being, to where it's like you're getting natural motivations coming up, there's almost like a little bit of a story that starts to emerge. And you know that you're at point A, and then you have point B that is something that you're like, oh, I would like to work toward that. But it's important to have that just almost like on the back burner, in the back of your mind, where you're aiming. And really to focus on the journey there, because what happens is when you're in the present moment, when you're in reality, and you're trying to make something come to fruition, you have to be responding to what's going on within the direction that you're moving. So if you think about it, if you're floating down the river, you have to, in some ways, have a paddle to make sure that you don't hit into rocks and other things. You're still using the flow of the river. You're still using your natural motivation. But if you can ground yourself in the practical realities and have like your bag of tools there to respond to those realities as you travel, it's a bit like basically, if you're trying to walk from one side of the woods to the other, there's a clear direction there, but you have to focus on that direction. You have to focus on, maintaining that, but also like, oh, is there like some kind of obstacle in my way right now? And how do I deal with that? And then, oftentimes the obstacle is here, some kind of mindset, some kind of thing that goes on where it's like, maybe we run into self-doubt and these other things. And then that's more of a call to go inward, to continue to ground into being. And that way, those falsehoods just naturally start to crumble away. But the metaphor that I like most was one that Jonathan Haidt had made in his book, The Happiness Hypothesis, where he talked about, basically the conscious mind and the subconscious mind being like a rider on top of an elephant. So the conscious mind doesn't really have the power that the subconscious mind has because it's a rider to an elephant, but it has the direction. And then basically it's the conscious mind's job to train the elephant to get its next peanut, and that's what the elephant's focused on. It's focused on immediately, like, what's now, what's the next step, and celebrating that next step to moving downstream for the goals. So I think, in this way, if you can orient to your goals like this rider and the elephant, your rider has a clear idea of where you want to get to as a general rule. But the elephant is really the one that does the responding, and that's how you bring all of your motivation in at once, because you get the strength of the elephant working for you once you have figured out how to ground yourself in the present while also looking off into the future.
Absolutely. And I hope everybody's enjoyed what we've talked about. Go over to Emerald's channel if you think that it will be interesting to you, which I'm sure it will, because she's got some great content over at the Diamond Net, which I'll link to down in the description. And thanks for coming on my channel.
Thank you so much for having me. I always enjoy conversations with you, and it's been wonderful. I've really enjoyed this conversation, and and thank you also for coming on my channel as well. And if you guys want to check out his video with me, you can come over there and check that out as well.